Welcome back to the Dad, Coffee, and Kids podcast, where caffeine-powered dads look to level up as fathers. We talk about life as a dad with young kids while managing work, family, and finances. That said, grab another cup, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back, everyone. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, and you've been listening for a number of episodes now, that means you're a dad. And chances are, if you're a dad, then you consume caffeine. And for me, that caffeine source happens to be coffee. I absolutely love it. And I'll give a little bit of background, but the essential point here is, how does caffeine, what type of role does coffee play in fatherhood, right? Like, routines are so important, and especially with our kids, that being in a routine that keeps you on your A game is an absolute game changer. At least it is for me. Okay. Now, I first started drinking coffee back when I was finishing up my undergrad degree. I immediately enrolled to get my MBA in grad school, and I had an internship at the time. So I would have a coffee in the morning at my internship, and then my grad school, my classes were 2 or 3 nights a week, I can't remember, from 7 to 9 p.m. So I would fill up one of those travel mugs with coffee, take it there, drink it in the evening. And I actually think that set me up for later in life now, where I can drink a coffee at 6 p.m. and go to bed by 9 or 10 and not be impacted by it. Not all the time, but most of the time, which is interesting. But now, and just 1 to 2 cups a day was the quantity in which I would consume coffee for 4, 5, 6 years, right? It wasn't a lot, completely, I think, normal. But it wasn't until we started to have kids where coffee started to play a crucial role in my daily routine. And there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than getting off to a rough start to the day, right? You get the kids up, they're, for whatever reason, just not going well. They're screaming, they're crying, they're not happy, they don't want to get out of bed. Then you come to find out, or maybe you found out prior, that you're out of coffee or you're out of filters and you're just absolutely screwed. So they're yelling, they're screaming, you got a headache. You're like, what the F is going on? How do I, I need to get myself together. So, and I know some people are against coffee and caffeine in general, which I think is crazy. I think there's science behind it that you can make an argument both ways, but I think there's enough evidence where a handful of cups a day is healthy for you, and there's nothing wrong with it. But so let me go through kind of my daily routine with coffee. I drink 3 to 4 cups a day. I typically get up around 5 or 5:30 in the morning, and I will have my first cup around 6:15. All right, so I like to get up. I drink water, typically as much water as I can, and then around 6:15, I'll have my first. I drink espresso now, which I'll explain how I got into espresso in a little bit. But I'll take my first shot of espresso around 6:15, enjoy it, because I get my kids up at 6:30 in prep for daycare. So that's one. And then when we leave for daycare around 7:30ish, 7:45, I have my second shot of espresso. So there's 2. That's kind of how I start every day. And then I'll have 1 or 2 more, most often 2, a little later in the afternoon, probably around 2 or 3 o'clock, or even after, closer to when I get them from daycare. Kind of depends if I'm going to the gym that afternoon, or if I have to get them early or late from daycare. I'll plan that last cup of espresso out. And it's been a great routine. I look forward to the coffee, and it keeps me going, which is great. Now, I only recently started drinking espresso. I normally typically hated it. I thought it tasted bad, tasted weird, was kind of like sour. Wasn't a huge fan. But earlier this winter, back in November, we took a 2.5 week trip. We took a cruise. We left from Lisbon, Portugal, and we went to Genoa, Italy. And along the way, we had about 4 or 5 stops within Spain and Italy. And now, during that time, mostly still drank regular coffee because we'd go back to the cruise ship, we'd have breakfast there and go back there in the afternoon. So normally just had coffee there. Did have some espresso in the cruise port cities. But the last week of our trip, we actually stayed in Milan for a week, which was amazing. And that's where you could really only find, unless you got an Americano, which it's fine, not a huge fan of in Europe, but we were drinking espresso 2-3 times a day, tons of doubles. It was amazing. I absolutely fell in love with espressos, drinking them, and that's actually what came back to the US, still drank coffee for a few weeks, and then actually around Christmas time, we got an espresso machine, and it really has been an absolute game changer, and it's been great. I like it mostly because it really helps me monitor my coffee and caffeine intake, right? Like I know I'm having my 4 shots of espresso are 4 cups of coffee for that day. I'm not going over, I'm not like, oh, there's a little bit left in the pot. Like, why don't I have a little more? And then, it's just, I don't think you should consume too much caffeine, right? So I really appreciate that aspect of drinking espressos and making that switch. But yeah, I would love to hear your coffee routine. What kind of coffee you like, where you get it from, what beans do you use at home, what do you grind up, what's your preferred coffee that you like to buy in the grocery store and brew at home, or if you do drink espresso. I'm on the search for like a really good grind. The one I have is okay. I also have some beans that I do grind up and use myself. But if anybody has any really good recommendations for what works well for espresso, let me know in the comments. All right, guys. Until next time, have a good one. Go fill up your cup.